I bought the Yaesu FT4XE in 2019 and I always knew I was going to have to program it via the keyboard, because even though the socket on the side looks like a Kenwood type, it's not. The two sockets there are closer together than you get on a typical Kenwood cable. But there are lots of videos on YouTube that show you how to program this thing, so I was fairly confident I'd be able to program it using the keyboard on the front. I tried, and simplex frequencies worked absolutely fine. Where I hit a problem was when I was trying to program repeaters, and in fact I got so frustrated, I must confess I actually gave up for a while and put this radio in a drawer. But the bank holiday weekend came and went a few days ago, and I thought, right, I'm going to crack this if it kills me, because as far as I could tell I was doing everything right when programming it. I switched on the repeater shift, I told the radio which direction to shift in, positive or negative offset. I entered the offset amount correctly, I entered the CTCSS tone correctly on transmit, I entered the repeater name correctly. I was doing everything right, and yet when I saved the repeater to memory, it would lose the offset. If I was doing it from the VFO, it worked fine, but as soon as I tried to write it to a memory, the output frequency from the repeater would go in, the CTCSS tone would go in, the name of the channel would go in, but it would lose the repeater offset. And I thought to begin with it was a problem just on 70SEMS with the newer 7.6 megahertz split, but it's not. I suddenly realised this affected 2 meters as well, where the offset is always minus 600 kilohertz, and also on 70 centimeters for the older repeaters, lower down the band, where the offset is 1.6 megahertz. So after much head scratching, I worked it out. If you press and hold the button on the side to go into the menu, there is a menu option, and I think from memory it's option 29. Yes, it is. Automatic repeater shift. I had that switched on. I'm assuming that this radio is representative of all of them. In my case, if that is switched on, if you then go to the other menu options to program in all the things like offset direction, all the usual stuff, if menu option 29 is on, it won't save it into the memory. Well, it will save it into the memory, but you will lose the repeater offset, if that makes sense. As soon as I switch that option off, I haven't had any more problems at all. So I hope this video will help anybody who's been scratching their head and wondering the same thing. It's a nice little radio, this. It's got a few quirks, but overall it's very good. And something else I've noticed incidentally is that if I turn it on and it's on a simplex frequency, to begin with you have both the plus and the minus offset showing there. But if I transmit, there's my FT4XE on the same frequency. Mike 0, Mike November Golf testing. You can see that despite the plus and the minus both being present, it still works perfectly okay on the simplex channels. I'll put a link incidentally in the description below to the video that I watched that taught me how to program this thing. And despite this little quirk that I've mentioned, don't let that detract you. If you were considering purchasing one of these are very, very good radios, especially for the money, so don't let a minor detail like what I've described in this video put you off. I just assumed that if you input everything correctly in the other menu options, then it wouldn't make any difference at all whether the automatic repeater shift was switched on or not, but apparently it does. I'll put a link in the description below to the video that I watched that helped me so much to program this, with many thanks to the author of that video, and I hope that this little video will have helped at least one person out there who's watching and maybe who's had the same problem. 7-3 and take care.